Buckingham Palace has said King Charles spent a short period of time in hospital today.
Royal confidences rarely leave such utterly raw scars. Yet today, Princess Anne's startling announcement has sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, shattering Prince William's composure, as the king's steadfast sister disclosed a final, deeply private plea from King Charles himself. William's world tilted on its axis. Raw emotions surged in the corridors of power, and whispers danced around the heir apparent's wavering resolve. With tensions flaring and loyalties tested, the future of the monarchy precariously trembles on the brink. So how will William respond to this irreversible demand? Let's find out. The room was still, almost unnaturally so. Not a camera in sight, no ceremonial trumpet to mark the moment. Just the quiet hum of expectation, thick enough to touch. Deep within the historic walls of Windsor Castle, key members of the royal family sat close together, but each lost in private thought. Something heavy lingered in the air, as if it knew secrets too sacred to speak aloud. Then the door creaked open. Princess Anne entered, unaccompanied and unsmiling, her presence unannounced but commanding. She needed no introduction. Dressed in quiet dignity, she moved with the calm assurance of someone long used to bearing the invisible weight of her family's legacy. No one rose. No one dared speak. In her hands was a sealed envelope. King Charles' final message, meant only for those he held dearest. What followed wasn't just the reading of a letter. It was a moment that shifted the emotional ground beneath the monarchy. Anne's voice, soft but steady, broke the silence as she read aloud the king's last words. But what left the room breathless wasn't just the contents. It was the fact that Charles had chosen her, and no one else, to deliver them. Not Camilla, his queen consort, not William, his heir, but Anne, the sister who had always walked beside him, often in silence, never in shadow. This wasn't a sudden decision born out of sentiment. It was a culmination of decades of trust. Anne and Charles had grown up under the firm gaze of Queen Elizabeth II, learning early the value of restraint and responsibility. While Charles was known for his sensitivity and introspection, Anne forged a different path. Firm, practical, and quietly indomitable. She never chased headlines or royal favor. She earned her respect through sheer consistency and relentless duty. Over the years, especially following the Queen's passing in 2022, Anne became the unspoken pillar behind Charles' reign.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
When public doubts rose, when internal tensions flared, Anne remained a steady hand behind the scenes. She wasn't the monarch, but in many ways, she held the monarchy together. That's why, in his final private act, Charles turned to her, not for ceremony, but for certainty. What made the moment even more profound was the letter's mention of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Charles spoke of her with unexpected tenderness, hinting at a role far greater than anyone had anticipated. It was Anne, not Catherine's husband William, who carried those words. And it wasn't the first time the bond between the two women had drawn quiet attention. In recent months, Anne and Catherine had grown increasingly close. Their connection wasn't for show, it was a mentorship forged behind palace walls, built on shared values of duty over vanity, service over spectacle. Anne, who had once raised her own children away from royal titles, saw in Catherine a woman prepared to balance tradition with a modern touch. The two had been appearing together more often, not by chance, but by careful intention. That day at Windsor, Anne wasn't just reading a message. She was passing a torch with the solemn grace of someone who understood exactly what it meant. The king's words may have belonged to him, but their weight, their purpose, and their delivery belonged entirely to her. And as the room fell back into silence, the unspoken truth was clear. Sometimes power doesn't roar. It simply walks in quietly, speaks when it must, and leaves behind a world forever changed. So what was this message that shocked everyone? And how does it reshape the monarchy? Stay tuned. The Queen's quiet prophecy. But just as Anne's voice faded into silence, she reached once more into her coat pocket, her expression unreadable. What she pulled out wasn't regal or polished, just a folded, time-worn piece of paper, its edges soft from years of being kept close. The handwriting, though slightly faded, was unmistakably Queen Elizabeth II's. The air changed instantly, as if the late Queen herself had entered the room, watching, listening, guiding. This wasn't a public statement or a royal decree. It was something far more intimate, a personal note passed between mother and daughter, written in the twilight of the Queen's life. And it wasn't about state matters or politics. It was about Catherine, not the Duchess of Cambridge, not the future Queen Consort, simply Catherine, a woman, a wife, a mother, and, in Elizabeth's eyes, a quiet force of nature.
She's equally decided to be a volunteer scout, so supporting children out and about, enjoying country pursuits as she does.
Anne opened the letters slowly, with the kind of reverence one reserves for memory itself. Her voice, low and calm, began to read aloud. The Queen hadn't written in grandeur. She'd written in feeling. She described Catherine not as someone who performed her role, but as someone who lived it, whose calm wasn't a performance, but a truth. Her strength didn't come from titles or attention, but from an inner balance of grace and resilience. Elizabeth had seen it long before the rest of the world caught on, before the speculation, before Charles's health began to fade, before the spotlight shifted onto who might carry the monarchy forward. The Queen had already known. It wasn't about blood. It wasn't about rank. It was about a kind of wisdom that only time and a lifetime on the throne could sharpen. Catherine, she believed, held the rare ability to honor tradition while welcoming change. In her, Elizabeth saw not only a steady companion for William, but a cornerstone for what the royal family would need most in the years ahead. Stability wrapped in warmth, modernity carried with grace. Anne didn't look at William as she finished. She looked at Catherine. No crowns, no cameras, just a silent understanding passing between two women who had both carried the weight of duty in different ways. There were no grand declarations, just a soft truth. Catherine had not only stepped into the royal family's story, she might just be the one keeping it alive. But where did this rise start, and how did she get here? Let's find out. From quiet beginnings to royal grace. It didn't begin with crowns or royal titles. It began in the gentle hills of Berkshire, where Catherine Middleton, known simply as Kate, grew up in a home filled with warmth, not wealth. There were no golden gates or historic portraits on the walls. Her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, built a steady life through effort and values. From them, Catherine learned grace without grandeur, humility without submission, and strength without noise, qualities that would later catch the attention of a queen. While her early childhood was spent in England, it briefly stretched to Amman, Jordan, where she attended a nursery school that spoke her native tongue. When she returned, it was back to the small village rhythms, school in Pangbourne, weekends with family, and long walks that gave her space to think. It was during these quiet years that her quiet strength started to shape her path. Later, she would walk the halls of Marlborough College, where she wasn't just a student, but a leader, a sports captain, a Gold Duke of Edinburgh award winner, someone who thrived without ever demanding attention. Before university, she took a year to see the world from other angles: art in Florence, charity work in Chile, and long days on boats in Southampton. Each moment added something deeper to her character, depth that no royal title could give. By the time she arrived at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland in 2001, her story had already been shaped by years of quiet growth. The town, known for its cobbled streets and old charm, was where she met Prince William, not with headlines or drama, but as two young students sharing classes and a flat with friends. Their connection wasn't rushed. It grew gradually, built on laughter, quiet understanding, and the kind of friendship that can stand storms. Even as the media turned its gaze on her in 2004, Catherine didn't flinch. She wasn't dazzled by royalty, nor did she try to chase it. When whispers turned to tabloid noise in 2007, she stayed grounded. People mocked her patience, but the calm with which she waited said more than any headline ever could. Catherine didn't earn respect by trying to stand out. She earned it by staying true. That rare balance of softness and strength, seen long ago in a Berkshire village, would one day become a pillar of the crown. Catherine, answering the call of becoming part of the royals. And then, beneath the starlit skies of Kenya, not under the gold ceilings of a palace, everything changed. Far from royal fanfare, Prince William knelt in the quiet wilderness, holding in his hand a piece of history, his mother's sapphire and diamond engagement ring. It wasn't just a proposal. It was a gesture heavy with memory, loss, and hope. By offering it to Catherine, he wasn't just asking for her future. He was inviting her into his past, into a legacy shaped by one of the most beloved figures in modern monarchy. That silent, personal moment became a bridge, linking the late Diana to the woman who would one day help carry the crown forward. Yet stepping into that life meant more than simply saying yes. Catherine wasn't marrying just a man. She was walking into centuries of tradition, shadowed by high expectations and constant judgment.
I, William Arthur Philip Louis.
Take thee, Catherine Elizabeth.
Take thee, Catherine Elizabeth.
To my wedded wife.
To my wedded wife.
From the moment their engagement was announced, whispers swirled behind palace walls. Was she prepared for a world governed by protocol and appearances? Even Queen Elizabeth herself reportedly had doubts. But Catherine never answered with defiance. She let her poise speak. On April 29, 2011, the world stood still. From bustling cities to quiet corners of the globe, nearly 2 billion people tuned in to watch a young woman from Berkshire take a historic step inside Westminster Abbey. With soft lace sleeves, a flowing veil, and calm eyes, she walked not with a tiara's flash, but with the quiet confidence she'd cultivated over the years. Her gaze met William's, not as royalty, but as equals. While the ceremony dazzled with tradition and splendor, the heart of it all was a private exchange, a mutual promise. After the confetti settled, the true challenge began. Life didn't unfold like a fairy tale. It demanded resilience, discipline, and grace under pressure. Catherine learned to navigate relentless media scrutiny, the weight of royal duty, and personal tests, all without losing herself. Through every wave of doubt, she remained anchored by the same unshakable calm that first drew William in. And as Queen Elizabeth's health faded, even the monarch came to see in Catherine not just a wife or duchess, but a steady force for the monarchy's future. Today, the Duchess of Cambridge continues to stand where tradition meets change, strong, graceful, and quietly redefining what it means to wear the crown. The quiet power of Catherine. That unwavering poise didn't fade after the wedding bells stopped ringing. It only grew stronger. While others adjusted to the spotlight through trial and error, Catherine Middleton embraced a different approach. She didn't need grand gestures or a loud voice to be seen. Her influence grew in silence, shaped by patience and purpose. Born in Berkshire to a middle-class family with no royal lineage, she brought into the palace a rare blend of warmth and restraint, proving that dignity doesn't come from a title. It comes from character. Skeptics once whispered about her background, wondering if a girl from such an ordinary upbringing could truly belong among centuries-old traditions. But Catherine never tried to outrun her roots. Instead, she let them guide her. Her life before royalty, school friends, family dinners, and simple routines became her strength, helping her relate to ordinary people in ways few royals ever could. That same understanding shaped her royal mission, giving children a voice, supporting mental health, and standing by families struggling with addiction. While cameras chased scandal elsewhere, Catherine built her legacy in the quiet corners, hospitals, recovery centers, children's wards, where compassion mattered more than protocol. She didn't demand respect, she earned it with calm, thoughtful action. When Prince William's responsibilities grew, she remained his calm anchor. Even King Charles, once distant, came to trust her insight and value her judgment. During the chaos of Meghan Markle's revelations, Catherine made no public defense. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was discipline. Rather than feed drama, she leaned into duty, parenting, and service. At King Charles's coronation, she stood beside William with quiet authority, not just as his wife, but as a respected figure in her own right. From the art world to child development, her work blends modern vision with timeless care. whether championing creativity as a form of healing or shielding her children from intrusive lenses, she walks the line between royal tradition and everyday humanity. In a time when many chase influence through noise, Catherine's strength lies in her quiet consistency. She reshaped what it means to be a modern royal, not with spectacle, but with soul. And even when faced with personal hardship, her grace never wavered, making her not just admired, but deeply respected. But what makes Catherine's quiet presence more powerful than any royal spectacle? Stay glued to your screen. Catherine's quiet courage. And just when the world thought they had seen the full measure of her strength, Catherine revealed an even deeper resilience, one that didn't come from tradition or title, but from sheer willpower and emotional honesty. In March 2024, with a steady voice and sincere eyes, the Princess of Wales delivered a message that was both unexpected and deeply moving. She spoke not as royalty, but as a woman, a mother, and a wife facing a battle that left no room for pretense. Following abdominal surgery earlier that year, doctors discovered cancer.
The Princess of Wales has revealed that she is finally in remission a year after doctors discovered she had cancer.
Though the surgery was successful, tests showed cancer cells had been present, leading her to begin chemotherapy in private at the end of February. Her announcement wasn't cloaked in drama or sentimentality. Instead, she calmly asked for privacy and space for herself, her children, and her loved ones to process the weight of the diagnosis. The world listened. People from every corner responded not with noise, but with reverent silence, heartfelt letters, and quiet support. Even in her absence, Catherine's presence lingered, strong, graceful, unforgettable. When she reappeared at the Trooping the Color ceremony in June 2024, standing tall despite ongoing treatment, it wasn't just about tradition. It was a statement. She hadn't vanished. She was healing. Slowly and thoughtfully, she returned to public life, not out of obligation but from her quiet desire to give back. By October, she was at Prince William's side in Southport, comforting families hit by tragedy, offering her presence not as a public figure, but as someone who knew firsthand what it meant to hurt and to hope. Then came January 2025, a full-circle moment. Catherine visited the Royal Marsden Hospital, not as a patient this time, but to thank the team that helped her fight. Her appearance was humble, but its message powerful: resilience, appreciation, and unity in recovery. Shortly after, she shared that her cancer was in remission. Yet even in relief, she remained grounded, acknowledging that healing was a process of learning, adjusting, and finding new rhythms. By March 2025, at the Irish Guard's St. Patrick's Day Parade, and the Commonwealth Day service, she stood not only in health, but in renewed spirit. Dressed in elegance, her smile was softer, her presence even more radiant, because now she carried more than titles. She carried experience, empathy, and an earned strength that inspired across borders. Through it all, Catherine never asked for sympathy. Her story, marked by quiet suffering and soft-spoken courage, resonated because it was real. In the end, what truly defined her wasn't the crown she wore, but the grace with which she bore the weight of illness and still found the heart to comfort others. So how did Prince William respond to the heartfelt message? Let's break it down. The heir's burden and the quiet crown. The room was thick with silence, not the kind that settles gently, but the kind that presses down on your chest. Princess Anne's voice, usually so sure, faltered as she read the king's final message. No gold-trimmed document, no royal wax seal, just a folded piece of paper worn soft at the edges, a reflection of its author's fading strength. It wasn't a royal command. It wasn't even a declaration. It was something far more personal, a final, quiet plea from a father who had ruled long enough to know that tradition sometimes needed to bend. For my son, it began, and for the one who stands by his side. A stillness fell over the gathering, not from shock, though the words had surprised them, but from the weight they carried. The message didn't name Catherine outright as queen. It didn't need to. Its meaning rang louder than any royal decree. Let her lead when the time calls for it. It wasn't just an endorsement. It was an affirmation of the woman who had for years held the monarchy together, not by force, but by quiet presence. William's silence in that moment said more than any speech. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't argue, but the subtle shift in his posture, the way his hands clenched at the table's edge, betrayed his inner world, unraveling. He'd always known the crown would come, but nothing had prepared him for the moment it might pass beside him, not over him. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about facing a storm with fewer anchors than he once had. Catherine had been his constant. While scandal and separation chipped away at the royal family's once imposing image, she had been the steady flame in the background, never demanding attention, yet impossible to ignore.
Princess Catherine is adored by millions for her grace, compassion.
When the public turned wary after years of disillusionment, it was her sincerity that quietly restored belief, and Charles saw it. In his final months, stripped of pomp and obsessed no longer with ceremony, the king had focused on what mattered most: family, future, and who had the heart to carry both. That faith he placed in Catherine wasn't just out of admiration, it was trust born of observation. She didn't crave the crown, but she had already borne its weight. In the quiet halls of Windsor, in the shadow of tabloid storms. When others faltered, she remained composed, clear-eyed, and kind. That strength had not gone unnoticed. For William, the message was both a comfort and a challenge. He would not face the future alone, but he would also not carry it entirely on his own. As Princess Anne folded the letter and her voice steadied, something shifted again. The room didn't erupt in debate or disapproval. Instead, it breathed, as if letting go of the past to welcome something new. In that soft exhale lingered the king's greatest legacy. Not tradition, but trust. So, what's next for the monarchy? How will Catherine respond? Stay tuned to find out. Catherine's quiet strength, the heart of a changing monarchy. In a room heavy with uncertainty and quiet sorrow, Catherine's presence was a steady light, calm, unassuming, but deeply powerful. She didn't need grand gestures or loud declarations. Her strength spoke in the gentlest ways. As Prince William grappled with the weight of their father's final message, Catherine reached out with a soft touch on his back, her eyes silently saying, "You're not alone. I'm here." From the very start, Catherine carried herself with a quiet grace. She never chased the spotlight, but when it found her, she met it with calm confidence and warmth. As the pressure of history and tradition pressed down on the royal family, it was her steady spirit that gave everyone around her hope. She wore no crown, yet in her heart, she held the true essence of royalty. While much of the world's attention stayed fixed on King Charles's health and William's silent struggle, Catherine moved forward in her own way, slow and steady. She embraced causes close to her heart: early childhood care, mental health support, and helping families facing hardship. These weren't for show or applause. Every quiet act of kindness, every thoughtful word, built a path uniquely hers, one defined by genuine care and brave humility. In an age often ruled by appearances, Catherine's sincerity stood out. She didn't seek praise or a grand stage. Instead, her leadership was in every small, meaningful step she took. When Princess Anne shared the king's last message, naming Catherine as the monarchy's anchor for the future, those who truly understood felt the truth behind it. She had not just stood beside the throne, she had held it steady through the toughest storms. As William's eyes filled with tears and he clasped her hand, it was more than comfort. It was a shared acknowledgement of a new era. The royal family was evolving, and the future now rested gently in Catherine's capable, unwavering hands. So, what do you think? Will Catherine stick to tradition or blaze a new trail for the monarchy? We'd like to hear your thoughts, so don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.